So my name is Bryant Baker. I am the Conservation Director of Los Padres Forest Watch, and I am joined by my colleague, my coworker, Rebecca August. She is the Director of Advocacy at Forest Watch. And just so you know a little bit about us before we get started with this, we are Los Padres Forest Watch. We're an organization that's been around since about 2004. We're based in Santa Barbara, and we work to protect public lands up and down the Central Coast, primarily the Los Padres National Forest and the Carrizo Plain National Monument. So we've actually been very involved in issues that affect the Carrizo Plain National Monument, which is why you are all here. You want to learn more about the Carrizo and celebrate the fact that it just turned 20 years old. It was designated back in 2001 by Bill Clinton before he left office. So this is part of our first in our series of events kind of celebrating this 20th anniversary. And we've been fighting to make sure that this area stays protected for the last several years. We've been working to try to stop some new oil drilling proposals that have come up in the Carrizo Plain National Monument, some oil drilling that is in the works right now around the Carrizo Plain, right along the boundary. We also did a lot back in 2017 during the Trump administration's review of several national monuments around the country that included the Carrizo Plain National Monument and ultimately resulted in a couple of monuments being reduced in size. So we've been doing a lot of work with this national monument and trying to make sure that it stays protected. And we are really, really excited to not only be celebrating the 20th anniversary of this amazing place, but also to have Chuck Graham, who's been a longtime friend of the organization. We've worked together on some stuff. He's been kind enough to allow us to use his photos for various things, and we are really excited to have him. He is a writer, a photographer, a naturalist. He's been documenting his experiences on the Carrizo Plain National Monument for the last 15 years. But he's also been doing a lot of work, especially around the Channel Islands. He's been doing a lot of photography and writing that has helped highlight the beauty and diversity of our landscape here on the Central Coast. And just a little bit more about Chuck. He was born in Santa Monica and has lived in Carpinteria since 1975. So he has been in the region for quite some time now. He has degrees in journalism and history, and he has had a lot of his work, his writings, and his photography featured in some pretty well-known, some pretty big magazines and newspapers, things like National Geographic for Kids, Living Bird magazine, Natural History magazine, BBC Wildlife, Men's Journal, Canoe and Kayak magazine, American Forest. The list goes on and on. You've maybe seen his photos featured in Washington Post articles, The Guardian, Wall Street Journal. He's done a lot of work over the years, and his work is quite well known, especially in the region, because it is such an amazing way to feature a lot of the landscapes that we have here that make our area so special. So we are really excited to have Chuck. Welcome, Chuck. We are so thankful for you to be here and share with us some of your interesting experiences that you've had over the years on the Carrizo Plain National Monument as we celebrate the 20th anniversary. So real quick, before we get started, one thing I meant to mention a little bit sooner, for those of you in the audience, we cannot see your faces, we cannot hear you. That has nothing against you, that's just how this webinar is set up. We would love to see your faces if we could. But if you have any questions, there is on the right-hand side of your screen, you should see a little question mark tab. So you can actually write questions. It says want answers, ask the staff a question. So you can put your question in the box there. Rebecca and I will be looking at those. If you have questions that are really pressing, you really want Chuck to answer it right as he's talking about something specific, we will try to relay that question to him if we can. Otherwise, we'll have a little Q&A session at the end. So that's where you put your questions. You can also raise your hand. That'll be especially useful in the the Q&A session if you really want your question answered. Feel free to click that little raise your hand button. So with that, I think we are good to get started here. Chuck, I'm going to let you take it away. So I'm going to make you a presenter here, and you should be able to share your screen. Yeah, perfect.
All right, thanks for having me, everybody. Thank you, Bryant, Rebecca. Thank you all for viewing this presentation. The Carrizo Plain, important area. It's the last of our grasslands in California. It's the last best habitat for a lot of different flora and fauna out there. I'm going to take you on a little bit of a visual journey here. It culminates 15 years of photography. There's some photos in here that are in my book, and then there's others that are not. The book was 116 pages. It has 115 photos, and it got a little difficult trying to figure out what was going to go in there and what wasn't. And those were some of probably the bigger challenges I had creating the book. But the book really is a small thing compared to what is really important. It's the 20-year anniversary of the Carrizo Plain. It's in a really important place. It definitely needs to stay the way it is and maybe even grow a little bit with some land acquisitions to open up corridors for more wildlife like pronghorn antelope, giant kangaroo rats, kit foxes, things like that. Things that need to move in order for the habitat to grow. So there are surrounding areas around the Carrizo Plain that are doing that through organizations like the Carrizo Plain Conservancy and Friends of the Carrizo Plain. They do a lot of work out there. So I'm going to start by taking you on a little bit of a journey in the Carrizo Plain. This first image is what you see when you enter the monument from the 166 or Highway 58 on Soda Lake Road. This is kind of what it looks like right now. It's kind of tan, kind of brown, kind of beige, but still really beautiful out there even when there isn't a bloom. This is kind of what I work out of, my truck. If I'm not on foot, I'm around my truck and kind of just pick a spot, sleep wherever, under the stars, wide open spaces out there, lots of roads with no names, and you just kind of putt along out there. You really, if you want to see anything out there, you have to drive slowly, and you have to stop and you have to scan. So if you haven't been out there before, I would say bring some binoculars. They're a good thing to have out there, and just slow down and enjoy, because if you go too fast, you're going to zoom right through and you're going to miss a lot of what's out there. So this is actually the cover of the book. This was taken in 2017 during that super bloom. That was an incredible year. That was an important super bloom because that was the year that the California drought finally ended, so to speak. We got a lot of rain that year. The flowers were incredible. This was taken from Soda Lake Road. These pronghorn were out about a mile or so to the west, near the base of the Caliente Mountains, and I just stopped the truck and just watched and wanted to see what they might do. And eventually they turned around and they came all the way up to the truck. So they made things really easy for me, and it was fun watching them frolic through those hillside daisies, especially the big buck out front there. He was tossing blooms into the air with his antlers, and they got so close I could literally count the eyelashes on their heads. This is some bush lupine, very fragrant. This was 2019, so just a couple years ago, during another super bloom, really close to the 2017 one. So in 2010, that was a really good super bloom, and then there wasn't anything until 2017. So to get another one in 2019 was really incredible. 2018 didn't produce much of anything, but 2019 was really good. This is actually one of my favorite photos. This is a slide film capture back in 2010. This actually came out on the cover of Outdoor California magazine, a magazine run by California Fish and Wildlife. I think owls clover are one of my favorite wildflowers out there, and this is a big field of them in the northern part of the monument, looking out towards the foothills of the Caliente Mountains. This is a recent photo. Actually, I think I've been out to the Carrizo Plain every week since the new year, 2021. And there's been some chilly nights out there, but even when it's cold, it doesn't really slow me down too much. Just want to keep making pictures out there. There's just so much opportunities for photography out there if you just kind of slow down and watch and listen and let things kind of unfold on their own. This is another one of my favorites. This one didn't make the book. It's a barn owl. It's sitting on the inside of one of the sandstone rock outcroppings. But I love the way wildlife can blend into a landscape, and this one's unique because a lot of the barn owl's feathers are the same colors of the lichen on the sandstone, so I'm always looking for that when I'm around the rock outcroppings. Lots of long-billed curlews out there migrating through. They love the Carrizo Plain this time of the year. You can see some big flocks of them out there. I actually had a couple weeks ago, had a roadblock of them on Soda Lake Road, right at the Selby campground turnoff. It had rained, and they were enjoying the road and both sides of the road, and they weren't budging. And so I just kind of creeped along and let them do their thing. But they great sounds out there when they're flying, and they love the grasslands. They love feeding out there and grouping up. And they're one of the many migratory birds that use the Carrizo Plain for a stopover. This is a photo in the book. Great sunsets, sunrises out there. I want to say I shot this last spring. Wasn't a super bloom year, but there were still a lot of good flowers out there. We had kind of a strange winter last year where we had a lot of rain, December 2019, and then nothing January, February 2020, and then a big dump of rain in March and April. So there were still some really good clusters of flowers out there. You just had to go look for them. But as always, with a little bit of clouds out there and a sunrise or a sunset, it doesn't matter what time of the year, if there's a super bloom or not, it's still really pretty. So this is kind of a dull looking photo. I think there's a beetle out there right there, the entrance of that dune. That wasn't the reason why I took the photo, but if you look at the bottom left corner of the photo, you'll see two footprints there, kind of tall triangular shaped prints. And there's a bunch of other prints around the dirt there. That's a giant kangaroo rat den, and that's what those prints are. And the giant kangaroo rat, it is the most important critter out there on the Carrizo Plain. It's hard to imagine, but biologists have told me several times that as goes the giant kangaroo rats, so goes the Carrizo Plain. They're really an important species out there on the grasslands. And this is, I believe, one of the photos in my book. This is a giant kangaroo rat actually hopping out of its den. They like to come out right after dark. They're very active. They hop around. They're very interesting. Biologists count their populations via satellite. So when a burrow is established, the giant kangaroo rat will come out. It'll mow down all the grass around its den, creating these big circles. And that's what the biologists do is when they look through the satellite, they look for those mounds, and that's how they count this animal. It's an endangered species. It does a bit of everything for flora and fauna out there. Very important. There's another, we call them GKRs. This is taken at dawn last June. They do come out a little bit during the daytime, but really early in the morning. But they are responsible for creating homes for lots of different animals out there: badgers, kit foxes, burrowing owls, weasels, all kinds of stuff. Their burrows are almost ready-made for those critters. Those critters can then adopt them and make them their own. And then, of course, everything likes to eat them. Badgers, kit foxes, weasels, snakes, all kinds of raptors, owls, everything's after them. One of the animals that likes to go after them is the long-tailed weasel. And this is, I believe, a shot in my book. I hadn't seen one in about 10 years, and I was actually sitting and waiting for kit foxes to come out of the den, and it just didn't feel right. Didn't feel like the kit foxes were there. They keep several dens around several den sites, and I moved away and sat somewhere else and watched 2 kit fox dens, and all of a sudden this guy popped up out of one of the kit fox dens and was running through it, trying to flush things out like a giant kangaroo rat. So it was moving from burrow to burrow, den to den, of lots of different critters out there that morning. Burrowing owls, they are out there. They're also dependent on those GKR den sites to make them their own. This is not, this is the best representation I could have got with this den site. This is just one den site, but there was a whole bunch of burrowing owls congregating there. This den site had a mom and a dad and 2 owlets. And as they grew up, 3 or 4 other burrowing owl dens, they all grouped up together and were all hanging out together. There's 7, I think, in this photo. There was 13 or 14 owls at this den site, not terribly far from Soda Lake, actually right across the road from Soda Lake. Another one of my favorites out there, this is a male blunt-nosed leopard lizard. They're also one of the many endangered species out there on the Carrizo Plain, and this was taken on a road between Soda Lake Road and the Panorama Hills, and it was the best place I think I had for sightings of blunt-nosed leopard lizards. Amazing animals, really pretty, really fast. Really got to drive slow along the road because obviously I don't want to hit anything. But they literally swim across the grass when they're moving fast, and they utilize all kinds of burrows for getting out of the sun, for hiding from predators as well. So this male was waiting for her. She's a beauty. She's a very pregnant female, and she has her orange spots to signify that she is pregnant, that she is in breeding. But she is playing hard to get with that previous shot with that male. Male was doing all the push-ups he could, but he could not entice her to come over. And then all of a sudden she shoe up. She ran over him, and then ran into another burrow and hit. And he came back several times, did like 4 big arcs around his territory, and she still was playing hard to get. Antelope ground squirrels, they are all over the place. Lots of fun to watch. This is a mom, and she's sorry.
I just want, there's a question about what's been the impact of drought and other effects of climate disruption on the Carrizo Plain wildlife.
Well, when there's not a lot of rain, there's not a lot of critters. Things tend to simmer down as far as numbers go. Fortunately, the last several years, there's been enough rain out there to keep numbers up. Climate change, I think that's still a lot of wait and see on that as far as what it does to the wildlife out there. I've heard things like the Carrizo Plain could turn into a high desert region instead of the semi-arid grassland, depending on how climate change and our habitats in the Central Coast region, how they adapt to it. So really hard to tell. Right now, I would say things are good just by what I've seen. And I want to say spring, summer 2020 was definitely one of the best wildlife years I've ever had out there in the last 15 years. So I would say that's a good thing, but we're still in I think you got to take it year by year. But right now, things are good. This is another favorite prey item of kit foxes and raptors and things like that. But this is also another critter that utilizes giant kangaroo rat burrows. These animals are very sociable. Love seeing them. They run around all over the place. They have a nice chirp when they know a predator is around. This was a very attentive mom. She's full of milk. All those black dots are her nipples. She had 2 kits nearby, and she would just stand watch and eat, and then she would go over and nurse, and then she would stand watch, and she didn't let them get very far from their den. There's another one doing some sort of yoga pose, stretching out. Definitely early morning stretch. They do a lot of stuff like this, real playful, darting from den to den, laying it out like that. Looks like he's sliding in the home head first, but a lot of fun to watch and definitely a lot of fun to photograph. This is a baby antelope ground squirrel. This is right by the visitor center. That's a good place to see them. Real flat, not a lot of tall vegetation, and they're out on their own pretty early. This one's still got a lot of fuzzy new fur on it. Hasn't even come close to filling in with its markings, but they are out on their own pretty early. Lots of these out there, Western Pacific rattlesnakes. Count the rattles on this one. It was a pretty big one. As you get into warmer days out there, and then May and June, you really have to watch where you put your feet and your hands out there. I had one day last year where I ran into 5 of them, and literally one was on my right foot, another one I jumped to the left and it was there, and then jumped again to the right and there was another one, and then there was 2 more that late afternoon. And sometimes they let you know they're there, and other times they don't. But it's always a little bit of a little bit fearful every time you hear one. This one didn't make a sound. The reason why I like this shot so much is I love how this rattlesnake scooched out a berm around itself on a dirt road where there wasn't going to be any cars. Didn't barely flick the tongue, didn't make any noise, stayed put right like that just before dark. So while you're walking, you really have to pay attention because they blend in so well with their habitat. It's like everything else out there. That was one of my favorite animals out there. I spent a lot of time with them out there this spring. These are San Joaquin kid foxes. These are 2 real young pups. There were 5 pups in this den, and these 2 were the bravest. And I spent probably 2 months with them, photographing them as they grew up. I also spent the same amount of time at another den site, but it's their ears. They have the biggest ears of any canid in North America, but they are also the smallest fox on the North American mainland. They're incredible animals. They can go their whole lives without a sip of water. They get all their moisture from their food. So pretty amazing, amazing hearing. So giant kangaroo rat is one of their favorite meals. Giant kangaroo rats communicate with each other by drumming their feet. So many times sitting in my tent, reading a book, doing some writing, I will hear this perpetual drumming of feet on the ground. And it just goes on and on and on. And they're just communicating with each other. That's how they do it. But a kit fox can hear a giant kangaroo rat drumming his feet while the giant kangaroo rat is in his den. So that's how powerful their hearing is. Their ears are big. They have a lot of veins in their ears, and that also helps keep them cool when it gets real hot out there. This was my first sighting of a kit fox out there on the Carrizo Plain. Driving along Soda Lake Road, I saw a pair and stopped. I was a long ways away from them, maybe 50 yards. And I thought, what the heck? This is a slide film capture, I want to say back in 2010. And I just wanted to see what would happen. So I just laid down and had a 300mm lens and crawled the 50 yards to this male. And he basically just stayed like this the entire time. I just kept shooting photos until I was really close. And then he stood up. And this is one of my favorite shots. This shot's in the book. But they're really beautiful. I love the tans and cinnamon colors and of these animals. They don't make much noise. Every now and then you hear a low guttural growl, and that was about it. But as far as anything else, I've never heard them make another noise. They don't yip. They don't yip at their pups. They just make a little bit of a low growl, and the pups bolt back into the den. Lots of this out last spring. Lots of horsing around. These are 2 kit fox pups. This is a super active den, really visible. There were 6 pups, the mom and the dad, and there was also something called a helper fox. So a helper fox would be one of the foxes from the previous year's litter, and didn't feel like dispersing, so sticks around with mom and dad, and then helps rear the next round of pups the following year. And then they can shore up their skills as well as hunting and things like that. So lots of activity out there on this den. The pups would pop up maybe 5 to 7 times during the day. If one of the parents or the helper wasn't there, they would just lie around above the den and not do much of anything. Once one of the parents was up, then it was, just romper room, darting back and forth, attacking each other, playing chase and keep away with old food. So really fun to photograph out there. And this is another family that I spent about a good 2.5 months with. They had at least 3 den sites that I worked. This is another kit fox at another den site. So out on the southeast corner of the monument, which is the Elkhorn Plain. And this is early summer, so it gets harder to see them once the colors change from green to tan or brown, because they really blend in well. But this was another den site out there that I shot a few times out on the Elkhorn Plain.
Chuck, someone's asked, Matthew's asked, oh, so sorry, is there a lag for me too? Matthew's asked if you usually go solo when you visit the Carrizo Plain National Monument, and what are the advantages of being alone? What are the advantages of being with other people?
I go alone a lot. It's nice because I don't have to, wait for anybody. I can be out and as long as I want, and it's quiet. It's you're on your own schedule, and it's the best way to work, I think. I did have a few weeks out there working with a film crew for a PBS special they're doing on something called Planet California. They're doing it all in California wildlife, and they had contacted me to be a guide, a wildlife guide, and I was a little put off at first. I thought, I didn't want to be around a big film crew, and they assured me that it was just going to be one guy at a time, and that's all it was really. And they did their thing, and I let them know what I was seeing, and but otherwise they were super respectful, and vice versa, and it was fun watching them work and learned a lot. But when you're alone, it's really all on you. If you make noise and blow an opportunity, then it's on me. But a lot of these pictures, especially the kit foxes, I would sit for anywhere from 8 to 11 hours and hide and wait. And so you really can't do that with a lot of traffic. So try to find places where I wasn't going to see a lot of people. A lot of these places are, off the beaten path out there. So yeah, I'm alone a lot, which is not a problem. I tend to go that way quite a bit. This is a kit fox. This is the male. This is an interesting photo. It's not just prey, but this is an antelope ground squirrel this male has. All their prey lives right around their dens, really close, with a few, feet, 50 feet maybe. So really easy for them to get prey for their pups. But the antelope ground squirrels, the California ground squirrels, birds, they all make a lot of noise to warn about predators, and the kit foxes take their cues from them. And once they hear something from one of the squirrels, they dive into their dens as well, because there could be coyotes around. Golden eagles easily take a kit fox pup. So everything's kind of working together out there, whether they're prey items or not. Red-tailed hawks, they're plentiful out there. This is one with a giant kangaroo rat. You see the long tail there. But they are easily visible out there as far as raptors go. Ferruginous hawk, just saw one there the other day. They're really beautiful out there, migrating through. Lots of different raptors, owls out there. Prairie falcon.
Hey Chuck, are you able to move the cursor off of the image? Just move it to the side, maybe. Maybe go up a little bit. Oh, no, that's good. Yeah, that works.
Are we good?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think so. Thanks.
This is probably the best shot I have of barn owls blending in with their habitat. I mean, their feathers are literally the same color as the lichen on the sandstone. This is a breeding pair, but they're very visible out there, probably more than any other raptor other than the red-tailed. This is a barn owl landing on some sandstone. There's a lot of old buildings out there, some trailers. This is one trying to duck and run. This is one inside an old trailer. This is actually, there were 4 owlets inside this trailer, and there's a lot of old ranch buildings out there and some trailers that are just kind of a mess out there. And the animals, they tend to claim that stuff as their own. Makes for good roosting and nesting habitat. You can see on the floor, this nest here, there's giant kangaroo rat carcasses. And this one, I know this is kind of a disgusting photo, but just gives you, it's a good indicator of how healthy things are out there. I don't know if this is a healthy looking photo, but that is a massive pile of giant kangaroo rat carcasses. The previous photo, there were 4 owlets in a trailer. This is another trailer just across the way where the parents were hanging out. And this is all the work of 1 or 2 parents. So it gives you a good idea of how important GKRs are out there. They feed a lot of everything out on the plain. This is another old ranch building out there. The ravens are another bird that likes to claim stuff for its own. They find old raptors' nests and make them their own, and also they use a lot of the old ranch buildings. When they're babies like this, they really remind me of a pterodactyl. Okay, these are pronghorn antelope, and they actually depend on giant kangaroo rats for browsing, as do tule elk. This is a pretty decent sized herd of pronghorn. This is an old shot. This is a slide film capture, long time ago, before 2010, I'd say. But they are the fastest animal in North America. They can hold 55 miles an hour longer than a cheetah can. So when they really need to, they can really motor. But their only predator out there would be coyotes after a foal. Other than that, it's really, they're sensitive browsers. They're not like tule elk who will eat just about anything out there. And pronghorn, they need room to roam. So it's really important that the Carrizo Plain stays as is, but also with land acquisitions by the Carrizo Plain Conservancy, they're opening up other corridors so pronghorn can move more freely out there on the plain. This is back in 2017. This is one of the cover shots, or not on the cover, but one of the antelopes that's on the cover of my book. But beautiful. Always great seeing them out there. There's not that many of them out there. I'd say less than 100 right now. Like I said, they're very sensitive browsers, and they need specific foods out there, orbs and things like that, to do well. And drought definitely does affect them. Now here's a shot of a pronghorn going underneath an old barbed wire fence. Los Padres Forest Watch has done a really excellent job of removing old fence, same with Friends of the Carrizo Plain, but there still are places out there where there's still a lot of barbed wire, and that impedes the travels of pronghorn and tule elk, things like that. So I think there's still a bit of work that needs to be done as far as removing old fence lines like this. This is a herd of tule elk. Tule elk are doing great out there. They are one of the herds out there are some of the fastest growing herds in California. And when you think of the Carrizo Plain, there's 250,000 acres of national monument there, and then you think about what was out there, and the grasslands, the Central Valley, it stretched all the way up beyond Fresno, and there was hundreds of thousands of Tule elk and pronghorn antelope, black-tailed deer, predators, literally the Serengeti of California. So it's great seeing them. I know the numbers are increasing. I see more animals out there every year. Hopefully those numbers will keep increasing. More land will be devoted to habitat restoration, wildlife numbers growing, and hopefully they'll be more visible for visitors out there. They're big, but they're kind of sneaky, especially when it's winter. They bed down and you don't see them, and then all of a sudden you see ears, and then they'll stand up, and then you can see a decent sized herd out there. There's a Tule elk cow. Actually was photographing the kit foxes nearby, and just watching a herd of elk saunter by while I was sitting in the grass, and didn't mind me at all. They just were moving through. There is water out there for them. There's old cattle troughs that remain full to encourage water sources for wildlife out there. So they go to and from, and then they also get a lot of moisture from where they browse. Another herd of Tule elk east of Soda Lake Road. It's a good place to see them out there. Another good example of having a pair of binoculars. Sometimes you just don't know they're there unless you have a pair of binoculars or a long camera lens. Soda Lake, this is dry, of course. Nice layer of salt crust out there on the lake. I actually shot this earlier this winter, but really pretty out there even when there's no water in it. But it's a great stopover for migratory birds out there. Soda Lake's the largest natural alkali lake in Central and Southern California. So it's a really important spot. There's a full Soda Lake. This was in 2010. So you have some idea of what it looks like when it's full of water. So I shot this from the other side of the lake, and you can see the Caliente Mountains in the background, and even maybe Mount Pinos in the very far background. American avocets is another shorebird that likes to wade through Soda Lake, another migratory bird that loves the Carrizo Plain. There's another one. This is another shot of Soda Lake. This is actually kind of a self-portrait of me. My shadows on a dry pan of Soda Lake. I kind of liked. This is a shot in the book. This is a slide film capture, and I kind of like the crust layers as they kind of made puzzle pieces out there on the dry lake. This was taken a couple of weeks ago in the frozen tundra. It was a little chilly out there. It was in the 20s, but I like wintertime out there. You get a little bit of Tule fog out there, out in the middle of the valley, and kind of adds to the starkness, but still very beautiful out there. This is more of a lush picture of the plain. This is taken below the Selby Rocks. This is a favorite spot of mine. It's just especially with clouds. Clouds make it a lot better out there for photography. You get a lot of beautiful clouds out there and shadows and whatnot. So I aim for clouds when I'm out there. Now the guy standing up there on the hill, it was a favor. He's a fellow kayak guide out of the islands with me. His name's Hector, and I convinced him to go out there with me. I wasn't sure if he wanted to or not, but he seemed like he wanted to go. This is back in 2017, and I've been looking at this hill for a long time, and I thought it would make a great picture. It's in my book, but I needed somebody tall. He's about 6'3", I think, and I convinced him to walk up there and stand there for about an hour while I took pictures. But it just gives you perspective of the place, the plain, and also the Tembler range in the background there. So he was a good model that day, a good guide. Somebody asked about being alone out there. So yeah, a lot of times I take pictures of myself just for perspective. But this is, I want to say 2019, one of those nameless dirt roads out there. Some owl's clover and tidy tips with a tent view of the Temblers in the background. And I don't think this shot is in my book, but one similar to it is. This was 2017 in the Tembler range. These are desert candles looking down towards the grassland floor and looking across the Soda Lake in the background there. I actually shot this with a 15mm fisheye lens. I want to say this was film as well. Diffuse light, I love diffuse light out there on the plain. That's why I really like that Thule fog. And if we get a bloom, then it really makes the colors pop. And some Phacelia in there, lots of Tixie coreopsis, and I can't remember the name of the other flower. I want to say Japanese hyacinth, something like that. But just you get this this huge swath of colors out beyond Soda Lake and on Simler Road. So this is one of those places where you can see the colors from miles away, and a great indicator that there is a super bloom. This is 2019. This is a Western Tanager male. I shot this actually last spring. I was waiting around for foxes. There were some great migratory birds moving through. And so when you're sitting there, when I'm sitting there, I'm not only keeping an eye on the den, but seeing what else might arrive as well. So tanagers are one of those. This is the Bullock's Oriole male. It's in something called some Canadian milkfetch. It's one of the flowers that was out there on the plain, and these Orioles love this stuff. They would spend a lot of time in this stuff. And this is another spot where I was sitting kind of hunkered down, waiting for the kit foxes, and these Orioles would move through. This is 2020. This was actually on top of Padrone Canyon. There's several plateaus up there. Those are cream cups and fiddleneck, goldfields, owl's clover, just a real dense field of flowers on top of the canyon. And I was surprised I didn't see anything, and then hiked up, got up on top, and there was these beautiful blooms up there early spring. This is also 2020. Hard to say, it's hard to describe where this is. Those are the Panorama Hills in the background. So if anybody knows where those hills are, then you know where this is. There's a little bit of a transition zone. I want to say south of the KCL campground on Soda Lake Road. and then there's a little bit of a rise, and you get a different species of flowers there where you would at a lower level on the grasslands. So another example of clouds helping with the photo and the shadows, and then you get color in the foreground, and it just makes you never want to leave. Sage thistle, I believe. I know it's in my book. I have some, but I can't remember if this one is. But another one of my favorite flowers out there, and I love it when they're growing next to gold fields, things like that. The contrast is amazing, and you see a lot of these in a little bit higher elevations on the grasslands. You don't see them on the grassland floor, but you see them a little bit up above. And that's the last photo. This is what you see on my website. If anybody is interested in purchasing a book, this is what you'll see. I want to say thank you very much to the Los Padres Forest Watch for having me, for everybody viewing and listening to my talk, looking at my photos. I really appreciate it. But I really want to emphasize that the Carrizo Plain is the last of the last of grassland habitat in California. It's the least disturbed habitat of grasslands in California. Should not be messed with any further than it has been, and it actually should be increased. So hats off to Carrizo Plain Conservancy and the Los Padres Forest Watch and Friends of the Carrizo Plain, all doing amazing things out there, taking care of our wild places. There's not many of them left, so we need to keep them intact. I'm open for questions if anybody has any. Otherwise, thank you very much.
Thanks, Chuck. Yeah, we have
a bunch of questions. If you
yeah, go ahead, Rebecca.
There's several about kit foxes and the giant kangaroo rats. One of them, let's see, the first one is Laura's asking, do any of the animals that utilize the rat burrows make their own dens, and do they use abandoned dens, or do they chase the kangaroo rats away, or the crats?
Good question. I want to say it's a little bit of everything. Once a den is finished with, after a giant kangaroo rat's finished with it, or maybe something killed it for food, it's very likely something else will come along and claim it as their own. Everything uses their burrows out there, whether they're burrowing to make it their own, to make it bigger, or they're using it just to get out of the sun, like a snake or a leopard lizard or a side blotched lizard, whiptails, other lizards out there, burrowing owls, badgers. I've seen a few badgers out there. It's kind of my nemesis animal out there. I've never gotten any pictures of them. They are very smart, very crafty, and they can burrow like nothing else. They can burrow for about 900 meters. I actually saw one dive into a den. I thought I had it, and I sat there for 8 hours and waited for the film crew to come out, and that badger, I could hear it underground, and then it tunneled. It had already had its tunnel, and it moved away maybe, I don't know, several hundred yards before it popped up again. So it totally fooled me. So lots of different animals using those burrows out there.
What are the estimated numbers of kangaroo rats? Do you know? Giant kangaroo rats?
I don't have an answer for that, but if you look at, if you remember that photo I have, the kind of photo of all those carcasses in that trailer, that was just one owl, or maybe the pair. That mound was about 6 inches off the ground and spread out probably 8 by 8 feet. They've been really busy. And that was just one pair of barn owls. So there was hundreds of them in there. So I can only imagine what the population is across the entire plain. Is massive.
Oh. What size is a giant kangaroo rat?
They're not a big animal. They're a little bit bigger. They're kind of funny the way they're built. They got really long tails. They got feet like a kangaroo. Not that big like a kangaroo, but shaped like that and oversized for how big they are, their body. They have huge eyes, and they hop. I want to say a little bigger than an antelope ground squirrel, but not much bigger than that.
Barbara wants to know, what is the predator for the kit fox?
Good question. Coyotes is one. Golden eagles are another. I would say that's probably it. I wouldn't be surprised if, a red-tailed hawk, something like that, would go after an unaware pup. But the parents are so on top of them. They don't let them venture far at all. Actually, last spring I saw the dad out with his 6 pups, and the dad walked away from the den and went to another den that wasn't far away at all, and none of the pups went with him. He made sure that they stayed put while he went to another den. The mom was down below, the helper was down below, but none of the pups went with the dad. They all stayed put. So they were very, they were doing what their father told them to do.
Well-behaved children.
Yes.
Elizabeth wants to know, does the helper kit fox usually have a specific gender?
No, it could be a male or a female. I actually just finished a story for Outdoor California on kit foxes, and it was really interesting what these helpers do. They basically are the parents. They help the parents, and they can, even if one of the parents dies, they can take over and help. They can literally be the parent if something happens to one of them. So they do that, and kit foxes, I guess, don't get pushed out. The pups don't get pushed out by the mom or the dad. It's really up to them when they want to leave, and if they don't want to leave, then the parents are fine with it.
Wow. Russell asks if you've seen any red foxes on the plains.
It's a good question. I've never seen a red fox out there. No, that would be a problem, I think, maybe for kit foxes as well.
Ron wants to know, why did the pronghorn evolve to run so fast?
I'm going to take a stab in the dark here. I think probably back in the day we had wolves and other things. I'm not sure how far back they go, if they go back to the Pleistocene era or not, during the last ice age. I'm not sure. But throughout North America, there are other predators. There's wolves, there's bears, there's mountain lion that would definitely prey on pronghorn. Out on the Carrizo Plain, really the foals are endangered of, being taken by coyotes, and that's really the only predator out there. Mountain lions are not seen out on the plain. They stay up in the mountains. So it's really just coyotes. The speed thing, it must be innate. They can really go.
We did used to have the American lion that went extinct.
Right.
Toward the end of the Pleistocene or early Holocene. So, and we had several other now extinct carnivorous megafauna. So, I would imagine the evolution is probably pretty similar to what you see with like gazelle in Africa. Probably
Yes.
similar evolutionary pressures.
Aaron wants to know if you have any knowledge of the Carrizo Plain pronghorn being connected to other populations at a larger scale. Carrizo's connectivity to other spaces, to the elk exchanging. That's what it says. Between wolves, elk.
Okay. Oh, I see. there are no pronghorn wind wolves. There is elk. There's not enough corridors. If there were pronghorn at wind wolves, I don't think there's enough corridors to have them congregate with each other on the Carrizo Plain. The elk and the pronghorn that you see out on the Carrizo Plain were reintroduced, brought back from extinction back in the 90s. So that's why it's important for other corridors to open up north of the Carrizo Plain, so pronghorn have that ability to meet up with other herds elsewhere. The Carrizo Plain, this is the furthest south that you find pronghorn. So really, if they're going to run into anything, their own species, it's going to be to the north. So other corridors need to open up. I think that's happening right now. That's a tough project, but that's the way it's going to have to happen unless California Fish and Wildlife wants to bring in more antelope, and maybe that'll happen down the road when more corridors are opening up.
We've had a lot of
there's
questions.
a few questions. Oh, sorry.
Oh, I was going to mention we've had some questions about camping. So maybe Chuck, if you want to just instead of trying to answer every single one specifically, can you just give us maybe some do's and don'ts of camping, how you normally do it, how you do it without causing, with minimizing any damage to areas where you set up your tent, and maybe also just a little bit about like what's the proper etiquette for hiking through the Carrizo if you're off trail, like especially if you're in the grassland, so just a little bit about how you approach camping on the national monument.
Okay. Well, there's 2 free campgrounds out there. It's first come, first served. There's one at Selby, the other one's at KCL. But then there's dispersed camping up in the foothills of the Caliente, and I see other places where people camp. You don't want to leave a footprint. So I hate to say it, but people leave their trash behind, just like everywhere else. You don't want to leave your trash behind. You want to take it with you. Plastic bags, Mylar balloons, things like that. I find those things out there all the time. So that's a bit of a bummer. You want to be quiet. You want to be respectful. You want to be considerate of others. Don't camp on top of somebody else. Find your own place. Bring everything with you. There is nothing out there. You're a long ways away from help. You need to bring your water with you, your food, but don't leave anything behind. Leave it better than what you saw when you first arrived. Take care of it. You want to come back to it, and you want it to be beautiful. You still want it to be beautiful. Be a steward of the land. There's a lot of old ranch roads that run into the Calientes, and there's lots of pullouts there. I see fire rings. I don't know exactly what are all the do's and don'ts on that. Don't want anything to catch on fire out there, that's for sure. They do allow fires at the campgrounds. You need a permit. Hiking, there's not a lot of trails out there on the Carrizo Plain. There's a few short ones, but you literally, if you want to go for a really good hike, you're going to be off trail. And I, kind of look down at what's in front of me, but you always want to look up to see what's ahead. And there's a lot of, maybe you won't see anything, but there's stuff around, and the burrows are all over the place. So I try to avoid the burrows. I try to go around those because you could cave them in. So trying to be cognizant of that, but there are a lot of burrows out there. There is a lot of life, and if there's a lot of prey, then there's a lot of predators out there, and there's really nothing to worry about. There's coyotes, there's kit foxes, there's badgers, there's raptors, and when it gets warm enough, there's snakes. So I say snakes are probably the most important thing to keep an eye out for, especially as it heats up and you're walking around out there. They're definitely around. There's lots of snakes out there.
Hey Chuck, you know, kind of going back to the tent, some people are just, they're interested in dispersed camping, but I think they're a little concerned about how to lay a tent somewhere where you're not really causing much damage. What's your approach to that?
So when I pitch my tent, I don't want to pitch it where there's wildlife living. So I'll find a spot where it's just flat and there's nothing, there's no burrows, because I don't want to cave anything in. So that's the main thing that I look for before I lay my tent down.
What about wildflowers? You know, if you're out there during bloom.
Don't want to trample through wildflowers. I mean, people do it. You know, it's, what are you going to do? You know, people want to do that. I dislike it. A lot of the pictures that you see in my book, it may appear that I'm standing in flowers. I'm not. I'll find patches and then walk around to the other side, and then flowers between me and my tent or whatever. But I'm not big on flowers. I want to see them for as long as they're there. They're not there for long. It's just going to be a couple of weeks, and then they're gone, and you don't know when they're going to come back. So people, you know, you want to see people out there enjoying it, but you also want to be considerate and respectful, and you want things to stay as long as they can, because that's a very super bloom, especially, is a very fleeting moment.
Someone's asking about, Sarah's asking, wondering about recommendations for cautions regarding vehicle access, like what routes are okay with the regular two-wheel drive car and good spots to park or walk. You said something about improved areas already.
Right. Well, when it's wet, the dirt roads are not a good thing to be on, especially if you don't have four-wheel drive. I don't have four-wheel drive. I've definitely gotten stuck a few times. I keep a shovel in my truck with me. But when it's wet, that alkaline mud can really stop you in your tracks. The roads are typically pretty good. I would say Elkhorn Road is a little bit more of a challenge to drive on than Soda Lake Road. That's the road that parallels Soda Lake Road to the east. You can get some mud flows out there. It can make things a little tricky. I know Panorama Road, which connects Soda Lake and Elkhorn Road, is closed a lot during the winter. It didn't open up until almost summertime last year. But otherwise, yeah, you got to watch the weather for sure out there. And out there it can be unpredictable.
I've had trouble on Panorama Road after rain. I mean, that one stays muddy, and
it's tough. Cinnamon Road's another one that's really hard to drive on.
Soda Lake.
When would be a good time for?
Oh, sorry, I don't know if you guys just heard my dog just ran up the stairs very loudly. I was gonna say I do think Soda Lake Road. Would you agree, Chuck, that it tends to be pretty good year round?
I would agree. Yeah, most of the time, yes. Yeah, it's pretty darn good. But if it's a heavy rain, it's a slip and slide.
Someone's asking for a recommendation about when to visit in 2021. I guess it depends on if you want to see flowers or. Yeah,
hard to say right now. We've had a little bit of moisture in January. We had some in December. I'm not going to go out and say there's going to be a super bloom. Last year was kind of strange. December we got a lot of rain. January, February, nothing, not a drop. And then March and April there was a lot of rain, and there was some really nice color out there. Not a super bloom, but better than a poke in the eye. better than 2018 or 15. For me, there's not a bad time of the year to go. Summertime is definitely get hot out there, and it gets a little snaky. But I like years when there's no bloom at all. It's still really beautiful out there. Flowers, you can start thinking about them in March, and by late April they're gone. So that tends to be the time of year where you might see some color.
Tony has a question about taking photos. Is there a particular posture, such as standing or crouching, that helps you get closer to the foxes, assuming that you go slowly?
Definitely got to stay low. Definitely got to stay tucked away, but not. I never wear camo or anything. I want to say some of the pups are more curious than others. Some of them came right up to me. The parents would let out a little low guttural growl, but the parents kind of were fine as well, especially after weeks. I was going out every week. That was the silver lining with the pandemic. I spent about 50 days out there between March and June. So I was spending hours at a couple of den sites, and standing up is a no-no. That doesn't work. You have to be sitting down. You have to be laying down. I was crawling a lot, moving a tripod with a big heavy lens on it, and trying to do that and stay quiet and make your movements as subtle as possible. Those are all things you have to do. And if you're doing that for hours, then you have to eat quietly, you have to drink quietly, you got to turn your cell phone off, all those things. Being quiet is key to spending time with any wildlife, especially kit foxes, because they are so sensitive. I mean, the moment there's any sort of sound they're not comfortable with, they are diving into the burrow altogether.
There are several questions here about the rock, the painted rock. I wonder if maybe you want to say a word about that.
About painted rock?
There, I guess it was in photos. It was in some of the photos behind people that photographed the rock and
the Thule cow. Yeah, there was.
Got it.
Painted rock was in the background.
Right. And what's the question?
Someone was asking why you didn't mention it, and then there's another question about why, if there's any photos of the painted caves. And
there's discussion about that for my book, and I know that's a very sensitive issue with Native Americans, and I chose not to put anything in my book, and that was also under the recommendations from people from Friends of the Carrizo Plain and the Carrizo Conservancy. Rock art around here is some of the most elaborate in North America. A lot of it is, people know where it is, and others, we don't know where it is. And there was no way I was going to put anything like that in my book, just out of respect more than anything. So that's the answer to that.
Are there any other books planned? Maybe the Channel Islands. Aaron asked this question.
I have all the material for a book on the Channel Islands, but when you're photographing these things and having these experiences, you come to find out that it's never enough. I want more experiences, whether they're in a book or a magazine or a newspaper or whatever. It doesn't matter. I want to be in places where there's wildlife in wild places, and We are fortunate to live where we live on the Central Coast. You know, we live in one of the most unique places in North America with the islands and backcountry and grasslands. I mean, it's all right here. It's incredible. It's beautiful. I want to keep it that way. Yes, I would like to do a book on the islands. The Carrizo Plain book is a self-published book, so it's all on me to get it out there. I'm doing everything. All the writings, the photography, the taking orders and distribution and all that, but it's been a very enjoyable experience. It's really been fun actually doing curbside deliveries and meeting people, and meeting people especially with a similar love for a very unique place.
Hey Chuck, have you ever, someone wanted to know if you've ever paddled Soda Lake.
I don't think it gets enough water. I think it's pretty shallow in there. When you see avocets and things like that walking out in the middle of the lake and they're not even getting their feathers wet, that tells me that's not a good place to go paddle.
Yeah, and someone actually wanted to know about avocets. They wanted to know when do you see avocets, and then another person wanted to know if you've ever seen Sandhill Cranes out there.
Yeah, I've never seen Sandhill Cranes out there. It used to be the word was stand out at the Soda Lake overlook and in the spring and watch them fly in, and I tried that many times and I never saw anything. I've heard now that it's been quite a few years since Sandhill Cranes utilized Soda Lake. Avocets, you can see them now all the way into late spring. Last year there was just enough water in some of the vernal pools that surround Soda Lake, and I was getting into those and seeing quite a few in there. But even on some of the old salt creeks that are just north of Soda Lake, I've seen them in there as well, in some of those channels along Soda Lake Road. So they're definitely around.
Was it the Sandhill Crane that was the logo for a while? It was
that was a long-tailed curlew.
Oh, that's what it was. Okay, yeah, that's right. That's right.
There's a bunch of questions about all kinds of animals that I have never seen, but maybe you have. So there were questions about wolves, black bears, bullhorn, wild pigs, cats, and the last one's condor. So maybe you've seen.
Bears are in the Caliente Mountains. I saw some sign up there a few days ago. I've seen bobcats right near the Selby Rocks. So I know they're around. Condors, I wish we would see them out on the Carrizo Plain. I don't know why we don't. Seems like there'd be good foraging habitat there, but they are nearby. They are in the Los Padres National Forest, Bitter Creek National Wildlife Refuge, Hopper Mountain National Wildlife Refuge. Those are all places that are nearby, especially as the condor flies. That's not a big effort for them to fly over. On top of Caliente Ridge, there's now a pull out there for viewing the plain and the Cuyama Valley, the Sierra Madre, and there is an interpretive sign there with condors on it. So it's not impossible to see them up there. But I've never seen a condor out on the Carrizo Plain. The shot of my book is actually a shot from the Sierra Madre when birds were released up in Lion Canyon in the forest.
The tracking data for the condors, the Fish and Wildlife Service releases every quarter. We've definitely noticed that they fly over the Carrizo sometimes. So
well, that's great.
Yeah, you can theoretically, yeah, you can see them flying overhead, but I don't think I've seen any data that was showing that they were really spending a lot of time, down on the valley floor, especially. So. We don't have any wolves.
David wants to know how long.
Sorry, I just wanted to, I don't know if you mentioned
David
that,
wants
we
to
don't,
know.
we don't have any wolves in California. Whoever was curious about that.
There has been
What
a
Northern
wolf, I
California?
want to say, that's moved in and out of Oregon or Washington, that's moved into Northern California. I don't know what the current story is behind that, but I would be all in on wolves.
How long do you go out for when you go for a shoot, when you go for a photo shoot?
Usually I go out to the Carrizo Plain. I'll spend anywhere from usually it's like 3 days, 4 days. And then I come home, I'll do a little work in the lifeguard tower or out the islands, and then I go back out.
Do you need a permit to camp there?
No.
You can just go out. Yeah, pretty free and easy.
There's no entrance fee either. So that's one of the cool things about the National Monument is not like going into a national park where you'll go through a gate and have to pay some money, but it's the Wild West. Some people asked Chuck about feral pigs. Do you know anything about the feral pig situation slash wild boars?
Yeah, they're out there. Typically they stick to the Caliente, I believe, and there is hunting allowed on the west side of the Caliente. I want to say it's Wednesdays, Saturdays. You can go after pig, rabbit, and maybe quail or dove. So yes, there is hunting there on the west side, on the 166 side.
Speaking of hunters, where do the barn owls roost if they don't roost in an old trailer or a barn?
Well, sandstone rock outcroppings are a favorite for lots of different things. When Paint a Rock, that walk out there or the drive out there is open to the public. There's a lot of movement out there with barn owls. I've seen prairie falcons in there. There's desert cottontails running around, lots of them running around. They run around even on the rocks. There's lots of songbirds that use the sandstone as basically like a big giant condominium with all the clefts and alcoves in the rock. And you see, all the evidence of them with all the droppings and whatnot, all the bird guano.
Do you know how the cattle grazing, if there's still cattle grazing, and how it's being handled and managed?
Yes, I don't know how it's being handled. It still goes on out there. There's still a couple. I want to say the KCL Ranch still has a cattle outfit out there, and I'm gonna say that the cattle are free to roam certain times of the year. It's not all year, and they're moved around a bit. So I mean, some of the old ranch sites out there are still utilized, but you really only see them in certain areas and certain times of the year.
Let's see. Can you tell us more about the relationship between the giant kangaroo rat and how they affect grazing by pronghorn and tule elk?
Yeah, so
it's
a good question. So giant kangaroo rats are kind of like little eco gardeners. They are little rototillers. So they while they're mowing down grasses, they're turning over the soil, and that encourages food to grow that pronghorn and tule elk enjoy. So that's another reason why giant kangaroo is really a keystone species out there. They're really important for virtually everything out there. It provides the needs for everything.
Well, I think people are starting to sort of trickle out, and I think we've gone through, Rebecca, I think we've gone through most of the questions. I know someone had a question about can people volunteer for fence removal, and I will just say, yeah, you should definitely check out the Carrizo Plain Conservancy, Forest Watch. I mean, we've teamed up. Gosh, that was a couple years ago. We teamed up on a fence removal project. A volunteer, Rebecca and I were both out
so
there.
Fun.
So yeah, that was really fun. And we do have plans to do some more of that. Particularly, I think we're looking at maybe when the COVID conditions aren't so bad, and based on some grant funding. And I know the Conservancy is working on that as well. So yeah, I think there are opportunities, definitely. And I would just suggest that you check out Forest Watch and the Carrizo Plain Conservancy, and see what kind of email list you can get on. And feel free to, if you have more questions about that, you should have my email at least from signing up, and you'll get an email, a follow-up email after the webinar, and it should be my email that's the reply to address. So you feel free to send me any questions about that. Someone also asked what this map is, and mine, for some reason, that's the Los Padres National Forest. So you can buy that map and Chuck's book. You can also buy it on our website. We bought a bunch of copies of Chuck's book that we sell as well. So we take care of the shipping and everything. But you can also buy it obviously directly from Chuck's website as well. So I don't know. What do you think, Rebecca? Well, I do want to say, Chuck, we have a lot of people say thank you, and they really love the photos. I know that's hard when you're giving
Beautiful
webinars.
Photos.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
It's hard to know, but there are a lot of people.
appreciation.
Yeah, there are a lot of people on the other side of the screen that were oohing and awing and really loved the photos. And a lot of people said that. One person really wants to know, what's your favorite lunch spot in Cuyama? Do you have one?
In Cuyama.
Or we'll say, we'll say Cuyama. Yeah.
Was there a burger barn? Or
I'm starting to wonder if this person has a restaurant they want you to come visit or something.
oh, I love places like that. I love it. Places that are hard to find. You just they're kind of a surprise. So yeah, any recommendations? I'd love some, especially walking out of the backcountry and want some real food. Yeah, there used to be something, I think it was called the Burger Barn or the Burger Den or something like that, in Cuyama.
Mark is saying something maybe called the Place. I don't know. He just said the Place.
Oh yeah, the Place.
And there's the Buckhorn.
The Buckhorn. I've eaten at the Place a lot. They have a good elk burger.
Yeah. Cool. So
there you go.
Yeah, well, thank you, Chuck, so much for this. We
Buckhorn.
so appreciative. Yeah.
Happen with you guys. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks. And thanks for everyone who's stuck around. We still have 110 people watching. We had almost
awesome.
200 at one point. So, thanks for everybody for spending what is today? I'm losing track of days. Is it Tuesday?
Tuesday.
Evening. Yeah. And we hopefully will have some more events over the coming weeks and months that are in celebration of the Carrizo Plain National Monument. And again, I really recommend looking at Chuck's book. Definitely buy that if you can. And also, Chuck, you didn't mention it, but I'll go ahead and plug your Instagram at Chuck Graham Photo. You should go check it out. He's got some great stuff on his Instagram. I know a lot of you folks probably came from seeing this advertised on his Instagram, but if you don't follow him, definitely give him a follow. But thank you again, Chuck.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks a lot.
Thanks Rebecca for co-hosting this.
Yes.
Yeah, always fun. So
being the interrupter.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry to interrupt you with questions.
Oh, maybe.
Very mild.
Let people know about the recording, if there's going to be a recording. Are you sending a link with the follow-up email?
Yeah, I'll send a follow-up email with the link. I don't know exactly when that'll be ready. It takes a little while for the video to process, and then I'll have to put it on our YouTube page and then put it on our website. But I'll send an email hopefully later this week to all the attendees with some links, so you can watch this recording again if you want to, or send it to your friends and family. So yeah, this will be available for anyone who's looking for that. And in the meantime, just check out Forest Watch, check out our website, follow us on Instagram, on Facebook, sign up for our email list, and stay tuned for more events to come. And we hope to see people in person again one day, and maybe have a volunteer project out on the Carrizo Plain or some sort of hike or something. So great. Well, I'm going to end the webinar now, and that'll stop the recording. And I think I'm going to say goodbye to you and Rebecca, Chuck.
All right, guys, have a great night.
I'll be honest, I don't know how to end this thing without just ending it completely. So this is where we say goodbye as well.
Okay. Good night, guys.
Okay. Thanks. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.